I have a feeling this is going to be a long video. Previously on the first half of the tier list, once level 201 due to the level 3 of his ultimate giving the leech effect. So when he uses Endless Fury skill, he's immune to damage and CC, so he can heal that right back up. Melee DPS heroes in this game have a hard time surviving, but his skill kit eliminates this issue. What's up everybody, we back at it again with another Magnum Quest video, and in this one, finally finishing off the rest of my tier list. And I also had to make some minor changes since the first half of the tier list release due to the new hero Lycidas, also making a second account and playing through the game again, so I had some more information to work with. The image will have a link in the video description if you're interested. Wasting no more time, let's get it. One of the main reasons it took so long to get this video done is because I wanted to visually show the reasons why I ranked the heroes where I did. And MQ kept dropping updates, events that took priority over this one. From now on, if I do choose to update this tier list, it won't take as long since I already went over the reasons for the heroes' rankings visually, so I can just reference them while focusing on newer heroes, like the Fortress hero that was announced, and the other one whenever that's released, or when heroes get reworked. Timestamps will be available because I do have a feeling this is going to be a long one, so you can jump to certain heroes if you want. Before, I just wanted to say again, it's okay if you don't agree with certain hero rankings on this tier list. Everyone has their own opinion. I wanted to not only take mine into consideration, but the community's as well. If you have your thoughts, leave a comment with some of your reasoning, and then in the updated versions, I can change any if I see enough people agreeing with that, because I do love to keep learning about the game, and I definitely don't know everything. Tier lists can be pretty controversial, but this list I'm pretty happy with, and if you didn't see the first half of the video, I highly suggest doing so because I'm not going to be covering the S and S plus heroes on this one. I will be covering Lycidas in this one first since I ranked him in the S plus tier. First up is a new hero, Lycidas aka Dracula, where I gave him an S plus ranking. Initially I had him at S tier, but the main reason I decided to bump him to S plus is the utility he brings and the setup possibilities that open up with him in your formation if you choose to use him. So the first reason is his skill, Phantom of the Bat. It's top tier because at the beginning of the battle, Lycidas signs a blood contract with a random ally in the front row and teleports them to a random position in the back row of the enemies, plus lowering the enemy's accuracy. Not only that, but he also teleports a random enemy to the most enemy dense area, which is typically where your hero went. There can be a lot of RNG involved with this in terms of where the enemies get grouped up, so you may need to retry the stage till you get the right one. It's a little confusing as I say this out loud, but you can avoid the random ally part by simply placing Lycidas in the front row, so whoever else you put in the front beside him is the hero that's going to be teleported. This skill opens up many setup possibilities, such as teleporting Ares into the enemy, and cause destruction, teleport Alden so he can land his ultimate freeze effect on the group of enemies, or even the heroes you only used on bosses due to their survivability issues such as Feng, due to the blood contract sharing damage between the two. The second reason is his ultimate Blood Alter applies the ground effect, which I confirm just makes the enemy not move. I thought it would lower haste of the enemies like Harry's skill, but it doesn't. And also the silence effect, rendering enemies unable to use their skills. His damage output is surprisingly good, but definitely needs heavy investment to see the big numbers like in Star Map, or having +5 5-star gear. Another change was bumping Winden from A tier to S tier. So due to the recent buffs, he's got some serious damage now. Winden's skill Magical Blessing, he gains crit and crit damage, while also giving this to the ally with the highest attack. So pairing him up with, let's say, Sir or Ecker in the Fortress dungeon can lead to some crazy damage. With his ultimate Eagle of Dawn, he can easily one-shot the enemy team, which is why I gave him that S plus early game ranking, but keep in mind he really needs to be paired up with Cinia, as she's the game's energy battery, because he's very slow building up to his ultimate on his own. He's a super fun hero, definitely the wizard we all wanted, crazy damage, and you are now worthy of the Gandalf title. Next is Alden. He was always very much needed in the Shadow Dungeon, and now with Lycidas, he's used to teleport into the enemy team, use his ultimate to freeze everybody, and then typically I also see Durla being paired up with him to buy her time to get multiple ultimates off. I really do love a lot of the Shadow Heroes design, and Alden has two very powerful skills. So his ultimate Frozen Land, it inflicts the freeze effect on surrounding enemies for 5 seconds, and frozen enemies suffer the energy block effect for 8 seconds. This is ridiculous, and one of the main reasons for pairing him up with Dracula, so he can be teleported into the enemy team to have a higher chance at hitting more enemies. It's a very strong skill and gives your heroes the time they need to make the fight go in your favor due to the lockdown. The other skill is Necromancer. Alden resurrects a random fallen ally hero and also can resurrect fallen enemy heroes to fight on your side. It's a very interesting skill and another reason why facing Aldens in enemy stages are such a pain. He also has a resurrection skill, but besides him being resurrected, when he takes a fatal blow, he applies the freeze effect to surrounding enemies, so it's just more CC, more lockdown, it's really good. So now going back to the list, the main reason why these heroes are in the A tier is because they are situational. But what I'm highlighting about them is what kept them here instead of going to the B tier. So first up is Arthur. I gave him an S ranking for early game, but you'll soon realize just how fast he gets defeated in the mid and late game. I have him at 6 stars and still gets shredded like cheese in the campaign, dungeon, etc. I don't have any star map investment though. His skill Sacred Boundary, at level 2 the shield reduces incoming physical damage by 100%. This is a really good skill, but he dies within 2 to 3 seconds at least on the fortress dungeon levels I'm on before even being able to utilize this. He really needs to be paired with Cinia, because of her ultimate seen here, which distributes energy to your team and allowing him, once he uses his ultimate, to build it up again faster to get multiple ultimates off for the shields. Now I have no star map investment like I said, but I mean with all the other stronger strength type heroes, why would you do this? Star map is all about picking and choosing the right heroes you invest into, unless you're like next level spending and then what I say really doesn't matter. He's also a tank that has a heal for your heroes. Holy Light restores HP to the ally with the lowest HP, but just remember his heal percentages are based off his attack, same as his ultimate Divine Intervention regarding the shields he provides, which is why he needs those Ascension stars to really do well, because it helps boost his base stats. So next up is Aurik. You'll soon start to notice a lot of the fortress heroes are in this tier, and that's because they either are used mostly for bosses or preferably in the fortress dungeon tower, meaning they fall under situational. Aurik actually has a very solid skill kit to use in certain chapter adventures, and one of the reasons is because of his ultimate explosive rounds. When Aurik fires an explosive round to the target and surrounding allies, this reduces the enemy's haste. Reducing the enemy's haste means they will build up energy slower to reach their ultimates. This is a very strategic skill here, and it may help you out on those stages where, let's say you don't have the heroes to get to the enemy Durla right away before she ults. This skill will prolong her from doing so, maybe buying you enough time to defeat her, or on those annoying stages with double Arthurs and Aeluins. His other skills are pretty decent as well. He has a self-haste and attack buff. He can reduce the enemy's accuracy. Auto attacks having a chance to interrupt target spell casting. This one's pretty big. He can be purchased from the trial shop, which I would suggest as a second priority once you get your Durla maxed. Next up is Feng, one of my favorite heroes since day one, even though he's super squishy pre-level 201, because that's when his ultimate applies a shield based off his damage dealt. Before this, his survivability issues are insanely noticeable, kind of like how Ares pre-level 201 lacks that as well. Before the introduction of the new hero Dracula, it was unfortunate he really served no use in other forms of PvE besides bosses and Fortress Dungeon, and even then, sometimes I would rather run 2 tanks, so Arthur and Bill, with the Ecrystinian Winden in the back. However, with Dracula, I do switch between these names, between Lycidas and Dracula. They are the same, I just prefer calling him Dracula. And his ability to teleport the blood contract chosen frontliner while sharing the damage. I've heard of some more uses for the assassin type heroes like Hista and Feng, but I don't know what part of the game this is viable in. Since I'm already far into the game chapters, I might try this on my second free-to-play account if I ever get copies and build them up. But the main reason and why I gave him an S ranking for bosses is because this is where he shines and I primarily use him. He can hit some crazy high critical damage numbers in a row. We're talking easy double-digit millions of damage, triple with serious investment. I'm talking Ascension Stars, Star Map, Runes, and Gear, the whole package. Starting out, if you plan to use him on guild bosses, I'd suggest running him with Arthur to help with his survivability if you're having trouble in that area. It would have been interesting if, for his story, he was more of a monster hunter, because he reminds me a lot of Van Helsing, and then that could have tied nicely into the new hero Lycidas' story, since he's a vampire. Next up is Flann. Personally, I don't have much experience with this hero, even though I have her at 5 stars. I'm gonna be honest here, since I've started, I may have used her maybe 3 to 5 times. She's one of the more interesting heroes, as typically the games I've played, assassin type heroes are like agility type, doing more physical damage, but Flann is an intelligence DPS assassin, meaning she gets into close combat while doing magical damage. She has 2 marks she can apply, the Death Mark and the Disruption Mark. Due to her skill Hunter's Instinct, Flann gains dodge, and when this skill is active, each time she dodges, she puts a Disruption Mark on the attacker. Each one of these marks lowers their damage output, so dodge stat on runes is recommended. The Death Mark can be applied from her Enchanted Ringblade skill, which increases her damage output on the enemies with this mark. Her ultimate has the potential to chain damage from one to another and wipe out the enemies. If you activate this ultimate with enemies under 30% HP, they receive 4 times the damage. And if the target is successfully killed, she regains all that energy consumed in the attack, which is why I mentioned the potential to wipe out a lot of enemies. Also, while this skill is active, she negates all active buffs on enemy targets. Next is Hista. Hista is one of those heroes I neglected for a long time. I tried her out. Similar situation with Feng. She jumps in and dies instantly. Feng, at least at level 201, he gets a shield based off damage, but Hista keeps being a paperweight. However, her true potential is in bosses with all of her self buffs and bleed effect. This is the reason I put an S+ ranking for bosses, because with an invested Hista, star map, and all that other stuff I've mentioned before, her damage numbers are some of the best. Next up is Rickers. Rickers I have here because he is what the category is labeled. He's situational. You won't see him used much, if at all, in chapter adventure or regular dungeon, maybe on the odd stage that requires a lot of CC. His true purpose is for the wild dungeon to lock down the enemy team because of his skills applying the stun effect. It's the easiest way to give your other heroes like Ares, Issy, or supports like Harry and Naomi the time they need to do what they do best and stay alive. He has very high base stats, so he can do his job with low ascension stars. Another change I decided to make was bump Aeluin from B tier to A tier. Aeluin, I do see a lot of newer players using her, investing into Ascension Star upgrades. I personally never really used her, but I can see why due to the copies you get of her early on. I would say if you do plan on utilizing her for the heals, I would either keep her at 1 star or go to 3-star max, just because she falls off fast and there are many other forest supports that take priority. She's one of the top healers in the game. One of her main draws besides great healing is her Bewitch skill. This effect makes a random enemy fight on your side, so basically launching their skills but not their ultimates. With RNG on your side on the right target, this can be all you need to win the fight. She provides a crapload of healing that can help you on those tough enemy stages. Keep in mind heals cannot crit, however heroes may have the option to enhance them in their star map. Next is Carlotta. It's a little bit unfortunate that the enemy Carlotta hyped up this hero for me, only to get her myself, Ascension Star her up, and then just be underwhelmed. I do think she is very helpful in the Shadow Dungeon, but as new heroes get introduced, I find the need for her fades more and more. One of the main reasons I used her was before Cyan was introduced. I used her on those fair enemy stages where I would place her opposite him in the front line, so when she used her skill Shun Po, jumps to the farthest enemy, causing the enemy fair to change direction and essentially allowing you to avoid his pull on the rest of your heroes. Another neat skill to mention is Traceless. So Carlotta gains the stealth effect when HP drops below 40% and increases her attack. She cannot be attacked, but does still take damage from area of effect skills. This is a very annoying skill you come to hate in chapter adventure, as she just slices up your heroes with their daggers, and they don't even know what's going on. Next up is Merialeth, and this is my second favorite hero, second to Feng. Love her hero design, her skills, I love everything about her. It's just unfortunate it's hard to find use for her anywhere except the Shadow Dungeon. You will come to see that's the issue with a lot of the Shadow heroes. I solely use her as a debuffer, so my stronger Shadow heroes like Durla and Lycidas can stay up longer. Her skill animation for her ultimate is really neat, I just wish it could have been executed better. Her Vicious Entrapment skill, so this lays down a trap beneath the enemy with the highest energy, and doing an AoE energy debuffer to surrounding enemies, and after the trap disappears, the silence effect is applied. Any hero who has the silence effect catches my eye because you can turn the fight very easily with this. She's also got her skill Puppet on Strings that can apply the Bewitch effect, however it's a little bit different than Aeluin's. Aeluin's is random and to my memory doesn't allow the Bewitch target to use their ultimate, while Merialeth targets the enemy with the highest energy and allows them to use their ultimates, so it's pretty game changing for the battle. She also has an attack debuff to all the enemies when her HP gets lower than 75% and then again under 50%. Next here is Sorsha. I really wish I got more copies of Sorsha. Another interesting hero who has multiple lives. Her ultimate works like this: when an enemy falls under a control spell, what this means is immobilizing effects like Entangle, Sedate, Freeze, etc. They get marked with a Honey Curse. When Sorsha uses her ultimate, all those honey curses are recalled. Each enemy holds 2 honey curses and does damage to them. An important note for this skill, and another I will get to as well, is Sorsha has a lot of mirrored enemy specific skills. After the honey curses are recalled, she does damage to the enemy in the mirrored position and surrounding allies, so hero positioning is very important depending on who you want to target. Due to the ultimate relying heavily on honey curses, it's important to pair her up with heroes who have control spells to maximize her damage potential. The other skill regarding mirrored enemy is Fatigue Curse. Sorsha curses the mirrored enemy with the weaken effect, reducing their damage output. So strategically, it makes sense to place her opposite, if possible, the enemy who poses the biggest damage threat. And finally, the skill that makes her super unique is Bear Hug. When she receives a fatal blow, Honey, which is the bear, emerges on the battlefield. Once Honey falls, Sorsha comes back. It's a good skill to keep the enemy's attention focused on her, rather than, let's say, your Durla or your Dracula. These bottom 2 tiers, I won't spend too much time on each hero, but I will still give my reasons. Moving down to the B tier, the main reason why these heroes are in here is because they are the lowest of the investment priority list. Too many other heroes in their faction outshine them. And just a side note, I also don't have very much experience with these heroes. So first up is Julien. Simply put, he's a shadow damage sponge leaning more so towards physical damage. His ultimate can apply the vulnerable effect on the enemy's hit, meaning they take more damage, but his skill that is the main focus is this one right here. Julien takes reduced physical and magical damage. He gains haste, but the neat thing here is with the boosted attack speed, each of the attacks permanently lowers the target's defense by 3%. So this is not a temporary effect, and can definitely help sway the battle on your side depending on what enemies are being affected. Next up is Bill. I have him as an alternative to Arthur in the Fortress dungeon. Simply put, just like Julien, using him as a damage sponge to keep the enemies focused so my main DPS backliners like Ekrah and Winden stay safe. His ultimate, Ferocious Charge, allows him to charge into the enemies applying the knockdown effect and applying a physical defense debuff. Really, that's all I use him for. If timed correctly, can interrupt a lot of the enemy's spellcasting. He's also a solid tank alternative due to the skill Heavy Armor. Same idea as Julien, reduces damage more from physical but still has some magical. Next is Gus. So I have seen a high ascended starred Gus, with I'm assuming Star Map Investment put out some decent damage, talking over 100 million, but this is, like I said, low priority, and I'd only focus once many other popular heroes are finished. I feel his only use is on bosses because all of his skills are single target. He has a self-haste buff with Overdose, and with his ultimate, this is why I feel he's only good on bosses. Launches 8 attacks in a row, so if there's only one enemy, all those go towards that enemy. That's pretty much it about Gus. Also, he's pretty scary looking. Next is Veara. So I've actually ascended my Veara to 6 stars because the game was just giving me copies. Initially, I thought she would be pretty neat after reading over her skills, but like many of the heroes, they just get overlooked due to much more beneficial ones and how expensive Star Map Investment is. She is kind of like a hybrid hero. She can act as a DPS or a tank, but it's heavily dependent on if Misty, her fox, is alive. I have a feeling with investment, she might be able to do quite well. Her ultimate, Clashing Dark Energy, if Misty is alive when it's used, Misty can disable all enemy shields, meaning Ares invulnerability, Arthur shields, etc. It's a pretty useful skill, but if Misty dies before Veara reaches her ultimate and it's used, then much of her use is lost. Misty can come back to life though if Veara remains alive, so it can be a very hit or miss skill. The other reason is her skill Energized Slash. At level 3 it says the damage dealt plus 18% of the target's lost HP, which caps at 1000% of Veara's attack. This could be pretty huge damage on bosses, however there is no HP bar on bosses, so I'm not exactly sure if the 1000% limit works because I don't really know how missing HP from bosses is calculated. It could be simply by how much damage the boss takes. I'm currently awaiting on dev confirmation on this, but comment down below if you've tested out Veara. Next is Monroe. I'm going to be honest here, I fed quite a bit of Monroe copies when I was starting. Do I regret it? Not really. I mean, I have regretted other decisions I've made, but I'm okay with this one simply due to the fact there are limited frontliner spots for the more popular setups and there's just much better choices. Similar to Bill, his ultimate, Tidal Surge, applies the knockdown effect upon enemies, so if timed correctly, can be a good enemy spellcast interruption, but the water jets he raises are random. He also has a decent haste reduction on this skill. No idea how to say this word, but yeah, this skill reduces enemy physical defense and haste. And finally, Manton. I honestly don't know anyone who uses him right now, but with the right investment, like who knows? The only situation I can see him being used in besides Wild Dungeon is in PvP. So his skill Heritage of the Nomads. Manton's attributes increases as his HP drops, so attack, crit, and critical damage. When his HP drops below 10%, he is CC immune and he gains a haste buff. So if you pair him up with maybe Ion for the revival shield, I feel there's some potential here with all the buff damage to use his ultimate and hit some really high numbers. He's not recommended for bosses because it's only till about under the 1 minute mark where you start noticing the boss damage, so a lot of time is wasted before he starts getting those damage spikes. And finally, moving down to the last category, the C tier, the main reason why these heroes are in here is because I feel these heroes need either some buffs or some sort of rework to be more viable. Same as B tier, I don't have very much experience with these heroes. I ended up getting rid of a lot of the silver to gold heroes that I had on my tier list previously, mainly due to the fact that when they add in more heroes, they'll be fading out in terms of need. So the hero I went with here is Zander. I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't advise using your trial currency on him either. I feel he's got average DPS. His ultimate Blade Fan has AoE, so that's a plus. The poison damage is, I don't know. I mean, I just don't know many players who have invested into him, nor do I hear or see him anywhere. Comment down below if you have experience and invested into him so I can get a better idea of what this hero is really all about. So that's it. The tier list is done, at least until those 2 new heroes are released. But then, like I said, it won't take nearly as long. I can just add those heroes in and then just do the visuals specifically for those 2. As always, thanks for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for future videos, and stay tuned for the next one.